We have the Beal Center of Innovation and Entrepreneurship and the Stella Zhang 2024 Life Sciences campus-wide winners, doctoral student, PhD student, entrepreneur, and innovator, Sai, to give you 2Cube.
Here you go.
Good job. Thank you. Are we going to have the slides up? Great. I'm one of the co-founders of 2Cube AI, and I'm also a graduate student studying computational biology at UCI. So I thought I could start with the research that we do in our lab, which I think is going to be a great segue into what we do at 2Cube. Oops. I'm trying to give a presentation on cutting-edge tech, but I don't know how to move to the next slide. OK, perfect. OK. Our lab focuses on neurodegeneration. So the way we do research is a bunch of biologists. They do these experiments on mice or cell lines and generate data. Oops. I can't figure this out. Maybe. Are they? Oh, this. Oh, perfect. Our lab focuses on omics. So the kind of data that we generate are genomics, epigenomics, and transcriptomics. You can think of these as different information layers inside a cell. But the point I'm trying to make is once the experiment is complete, biology becomes a data science. So if you want to understand the biology, you've got to make sense of the data. But the data doesn't look anything like this. In fact, the data looks like this. It's extremely noisy. It's unstructured, and each modality has a different data format. And biologists do not have any experience with programming, so data analysis is a huge bottleneck. But the problem is much more complicated than this. If you look at any research lab, the ratio of bioinformaticians to a wet lab biologist is 1:5, which means there are more people generating data than there are analyzing it. To add to this, the rate at which data gets generated is much higher than the rate at which data gets analyzed. So there's a compound effect right here. So the consequence is there is so much data inside these research labs, and these researchers have no idea what to do with it. And they are generating more data, and they are completely unprepared, at least on the data analysis side of things. And time. If you look at the data analysis timeline for all these genomics projects, it takes 6 to 8 months to complete the data analysis. And most of the time is spent figuring out software packages and debugging code, and not the most optimal use of time. And that's why we started 2Cube AI. Our mission is super simple. We want to develop an AI-powered bioinformatics co-scientist or a co-worker so that every biologist has access to a bioinformatician to help them uncover new biology. The two main capabilities that we are trying to build are autonomous data analysis, which is pretty much code writing for biological data. And the second is interpretation and reasoning. We don't want these bots to just write code. We want them to help us understand new biology. So how does it work? I'm pretty sure you all must have used ChatGPT. ChatGPT is a conversational bot. So you ask it a question, and then it gives you a response. It's iterative back and forth. But what we're trying to build is slightly different. I think it'll work. What we're trying to build is slightly different. So in our case, let's say a biologist completes an experiment and generates data. He also has a research question. Let's say he wants to find genes that are differentially expressed across 2 conditions. And that would be his input to the bot. But the bot, instead of giving an immediate response, starts thinking. What I mean when a bot is thinking is the bot is having a conversation with itself. It's trying to come up with the most optimal plan to execute the task. And this bot has access to another bot. And this bot, let's say, writes code. It has access to all the tools necessary to do the analysis. And this coder bot has access to another bot, let's say an interpreter bot, which has access to outside data. It's super simple. Like, a ChatGPT-like system is good at a lot of tasks, but isn't great at any one particular task. The reason to have multiple bots is so that we can have specialized AI systems that are really good at just one particular task, and which increases the overall accuracy of our system. And again, our goal is to have these bots be really good at one domain of biology. So we had to choose between, do we want these bots to help us with cancer, Alzheimer's, or aging? We picked aging, and I'll tell you why. I'll make the biology case first. The biggest risk factor for the biggest diseases, let's say like cancer, Alzheimer's, heart disease, is aging. The fundamental cause of death is aging. So if you're truly solving for aging, you're solving for other diseases too. When I mean by solve for aging, what I mean is slowing down the rate at which humans age. And the business case. If you look at the world population, the current percentage of people who are suffering from cancer, Alzheimer's, or diabetes is less than 1%. But the entire population is aging. But of course, you don't want to intervene for the population under the age of 25. So your market's still 56% of the world population that are subject to an aging intervention. And again, we don't want to just increase the lifespan of one healthy billionaire. We want to have a scalable approach that's non-invasive, affordable, and can be deployed at the population scale. We started this last year, April, and then we were fortunate to win a couple of hackathons, the product development and new venture competitions. July of 2024, we raised our first venture capital. It was led by Y Combinator. We also have a couple of angels. We have close to $500,000 in funding, which is good enough for the small team size that we have. And next month, we are starting a research pilot with a lab with the Alzheimer's Disease Consortium in UC Irvine. And we have had so much support from professors in UCI, most notably Professor Vivek Swaroop, who's a professor of neuroscience and genomics. Team. This team is probably the most optimistic and energetic group of people I've ever worked with. I'll start with Anirudh. Anirudh is a childhood friend of mine. We grew up in India playing cricket together. Cricket's a much more interesting version of baseball. He did his master's in electrical engineering from Stanford, where he met his friend Jeff, who did his master's in computer science at Stanford. Dylan graduated UCI last year and is a PhD student at Cornell, and you have myself. For me personally, the team is what makes this entire process more enjoyable, and we are excited for the future. Thank you. It's the domain. So if you look at any company that are working on building these agents to solve biology, they are going after huge domains. They want to solve everything, cancer, Alzheimer's, aging, everything. The one thing that distinguishes us is we are extremely focused on solving a really narrow problem, but that makes our market size pretty small, but we believe this market's going to be significantly bigger in the next 10 years. So that would be our differentiating factor. It's just focus on a narrow domain.
I see this as something that would be really good for hypothesis generation. In other words, you're using your tools to go into a data set and running around in there and identifying unique hypotheses. But you know, in a lot of science, I mean, the gold standard is you must pre-specify your hypothesis. Am I interpreting this incorrectly?
Sure, I think, like if you're using the tool, you want to give the bot access to every single information that you got. So why did you do the experiment? What was the hypothesis behind doing this experiment? And then it can go and help you figure out the biology. But you're right. The bot needs access to prior information like the hypothesis that was driving the experiment in the first place. Yep.
So yesterday was an interesting day. There were three big things that happened, but two of them bear directly on what you're speaking to. So NVIDIA and Arc Labs announced, right, their collaboration where there's an LLM just for genetics.
Yep.
And then there was Microsoft that came out with quantum computing, and then there was a third one that's slipping my mind right now. Oh, Google's co-scientist.
Yep.
So the question, I guess, is, are you rebuilding things from scratch, or are you thinking of like leveraging huge investments, right, from NVIDIA or Google, and then build your thing on top of that?
Okay, so models like Evo, they are not research systems. They are generative models that can help you design, let's say, a new species from scratch. I think I read the Evo 2 paper as well. If you give it a prompt, it can help you design a new species from the ground up by designing genomes and epigenes. That's not what we're doing. We would be pretty parallel to what Google built, the AI scientist, but we are much more focused. So Google is going after every single science, physics, chemistry, math. Again, ours is pretty focused, focusing on aging, and that's our biggest differentiating factor. And we are not like building anything from the ground up. We are not rediscovering the wheel. We are just trying to make the wheel more efficient for one task. Yep.